You have felt it. That quiet, private calculation that happens late at night when the house is still. You open a banking app, or you glance at the balance of a retirement account, or you simply sit with the knowledge of what you own and what you still owe, and somewhere in the back of your mind a voice asks whether you are behind. Not dramatically behind, just not quite where the people who look successful seem to be. The ones with the newer cars, the renovated kitchens, the effortless talk of travel and upgrades. You have watched them, and you have wondered if the difference between you and them is talent, luck, or some missing piece of information you never received. Here is the inversion most people never hear. The people who look the richest are often the ones furthest from actual wealth. The quiet ones, the ones whose lives appear almost ordinary, are frequently the ones compounding real money. The gap is not flash. It is a short list of habits that almost never photograph well. By the end of this video, you will be able to count with precision how many of those habits you already practice. The number may surprise you. It may even relieve you, because the comparison that has been making you feel behind was never fair. It was rigged from the start. 1. You treat money as a tool for future options, not present proof. Most people use money to signal. You use it to buy time and choices. That single shift changes almost everything that follows. Data from the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances shows that households in the top 10% of net worth hold a far higher share of their assets in quiet, unglamorous forms: retirement accounts, taxable investment accounts, paid-off primary residences, than in the visible markers of status. The same survey repeatedly finds that households with high visible consumption relative to income sit lower on the true wealth distribution. In other words, the louder the lifestyle, the thinner the balance sheet often is. Consider James and Elena. Both earned roughly the same mid-six-figure household income for 15 years. James leased a new luxury vehicle every 3 years, upgraded the house twice, and hosted the kind of dinners that made people assume he was set. Elena drove a reliable 10-year-old car, kept the same modest house, and systematically directed the difference into index funds and extra mortgage principal. At year 15, James had a beautiful life and almost no liquidity outside his primary residence. Elena had a quieter life and a portfolio that now generates enough passive income to cover their basic expenses. The difference was never income. It was the decision about what money was for. Ask yourself tonight, when money arrives, do you first feel the urge to display it, or the urge to convert it into future freedom? That single internal answer tells you more than any net worth calculator. 2. You know your exact numbers and update them without drama. People who look rich often avoid looking closely at their own books. People who build wealth treat the numbers the way a pilot treats instruments. Regularly, calmly, without self-judgment. Bankrate's annual surveys and Vanguard's How America Saves reports both show the same pattern. Households that check net worth and cash flow statements at least quarterly accumulate significantly higher wealth over a decade than households of similar income that do not. The act of measurement itself appears to change behavior. Awareness reduces the small leaks that compound into large gaps. Sarah kept a simple spreadsheet for 12 years. Every month she updated income, expenses, debt balances, and investment totals. No elaborate software, no public dashboard, just the truth written down. When a friend once asked how she stayed so calm during a market drop, she answered that the spreadsheet had already shown her the worst-case scenario years earlier. She had seen the numbers long enough that volatility no longer felt personal. Her friend, who had never tracked anything beyond the checking account balance, felt every market swing as an emergency. You do not need a perfect system. You need a system you actually open. So ask yourself, if you had to state your current net worth, monthly free cash flow, and total debt within 60 seconds, could you do it without opening an app? If the answer is no, that is not a moral failure. It is simply the first quiet habit still waiting to be installed. 3. You let lifestyle lag income by years, not months. This is the habit that looks like self-denial from the outside and feels like quiet power from the inside. Census and Federal Reserve data on income mobility show that the households that move into higher wealth quintiles are the ones whose consumption grows more slowly than their earnings. The opposite pattern, lifestyle that rises in lockstep with every raise, predicts stagnation. The lag is not deprivation, it is the deliberate creation of surplus that can be invested while the lifestyle remains stable. James received 3 promotions in 8 years. Each time, colleagues expected the corresponding upgrades: bigger house, nicer car, more expensive school district. James kept the same house, the same car, and the same school district. The surplus went into taxable accounts and maxed retirement contributions. By the time his peers were still financing their upgrades, James had enough invested capital that a 4th promotion became optional. The lag had bought him optionality. The self-check is simple. Look at your last meaningful raise or bonus. Did most of it disappear into a higher fixed cost within 12 months? Or is a large portion of it still visible as increased savings or investment rates? The answer reveals whether your lifestyle is leading or following. 4. You protect your attention the way most people protect their money. Wealth is not only a balance sheet phenomenon, it is also an attention allocation phenomenon. The people who look rich often spend their cognitive bandwidth on status maintenance. The people who build wealth spend it on decisions that compound. Gallup research on workplace engagement and time use studies from the Bureau of Labor Statistics both point to the same conclusion. Individuals who report high control over their attention and low exposure to continuous comparison stimuli show higher rates of long-term financial progress. Constant exposure to other people's curated success is not neutral. It is a tax on focus. Priya used to scroll real estate and lifestyle accounts every evening. After 6 months of that habit, she noticed she was making purchase decisions that had nothing to do with her actual goals and everything to do with closing a gap she had only seen on a screen. She deleted the apps for 90 days. The urge to upgrade faded. The surplus that used to fund status purchases began funding index funds. Nothing external changed. Only the input to her attention did. Ask yourself, how many minutes per day do you spend consuming images of lives that are more polished than your own private reality? Those minutes are not free. They are a quiet leak of the same resource that builds wealth: focused decision-making. 5. You treat debt as a tool with a clear exit, never as a permanent lifestyle feature. Looking rich frequently requires permanent leverage. Building wealth requires temporary leverage with a known end date. Federal Reserve data on household debt service ratios show that families who keep revolving consumer debt and high housing debt relative to income remain stuck in lower wealth percentiles even when income rises. Families who use debt instrumentally, mortgages they aggressively pay down, education loans with repayment plans, business debt tied to clear cash flow, move upward. The distinction is not whether debt exists. It is whether the debt has a scheduled death date. David and his wife took a mortgage that was well below what the bank offered. They then directed every bonus and every tax refund to principal. Friends thought they were being overly cautious. 12 years later, the house was owned free and clear, while many of those same friends were still refinancing and extracting equity for lifestyle. The difference was the original decision to treat the debt as temporary rather than permanent. Tonight's check is concrete. List every debt you carry. Next to each one, write the date it will be gone if you continue current payments, and the date it could be gone if you redirected surplus. If those dates feel distant or non-existent, the habit of temporary debt has not yet taken root. 6. You build skills and relationships that pay you when you are not present. People who look rich often monetize their time directly and publicly. People who build wealth create assets, skills, systems, or relationships that generate value without constant personal presence. Vanguard and other long-term investor studies repeatedly show that households with multiple income streams, especially streams that are not pure hourly labor, accumulate wealth faster and with less volatility. The second stream does not have to be glamorous. It only has to be reliable and partially independent of daily effort. Lena worked a standard professional job. In the evenings, she slowly built a small specialized consulting practice that required almost no marketing once the first few clients were established. The practice never became a full-time business. It simply paid her whether she worked a full week or took 2 weeks off. That quiet stream funded her entire investment contribution for several years. Colleagues who looked busier and more important never built the same buffer. The self-check is whether any part of your current skill set or network can produce income without you performing the work in real time. If the answer is 0, the next quiet habit is simply to choose one skill and begin the long, unglamorous process of making it partially independent of your daily calendar. 7. You accept that most of the important work will remain invisible. This is the final and perhaps most decisive habit. Looking rich requires an audience. Building wealth requires the willingness to do the work when no one is watching, and no one will clap. Longitudinal studies from the panel study of income dynamics and similar datasets show that the largest gains in household net worth occur in years that look externally ordinary. The years of aggressive debt reduction, automatic investing, and lifestyle restraint rarely produce social recognition. The years of visible consumption do. The households that keep performing the invisible work anyway are the ones that pull ahead. Michael spent a decade doing exactly that. No one at the office knew he was debt-free. No one at family gatherings knew the size of his portfolio. The work was quiet, repetitive, and occasionally lonely. Then one ordinary Tuesday, the compounding became large enough that work itself became optional. The people who had looked richer for those 10 years were still required to keep performing. Michael was not. Ask yourself the hardest question of all. Can you continue the habits that build wealth even if no one ever notices? If the answer is yes, you already possess the rarest advantage on this list. Count them. How many of the 7 do you already clear? 1 is enough to put distance between you and the purely performative. 3 places you in a minority that most income statistics never capture. 5 or more means the private reality of your finances is already further ahead than the public comparison has allowed you to believe. The feeling of being behind did not come from an accurate measurement of your life against the true distribution of wealth. It came from measuring your private numbers against other people's public performance. Those performances were never the scoreboard, they were advertising. Once you stop treating advertising as data, the quiet habits you already practice stop looking like deprivation and start looking like the only strategy that has ever produced durable results. You were never as far behind as the comparison suggested. The comparison was simply looking in the wrong direction. If this reframing landed, leave a comment with the number of habits you already clear. Be honest about the zeros. The zeros are useful data, not judgments. Tell me which of the 7 hit a nerve or which quiet habit you would add to the list. Until then, keep the work quiet. That is where the real separation happens.